many fans you were in this year.
Hello disc golf fans from around the world, and thank you for joining us today. This is coverage of the Pro Forester Tournament first stop of the PDGA Euro Tour at Lagoda Disc Golf Course in Varazdin, Croatia. This is Round 1 Front 9 FPO feature card coverage brought to you by MDG Media. I'm Connor Wood, and with me, Elias Luukkonen.
Hello guys, I'm excited to see how this exciting front 9 unfolds.
As am I. We have starting our card here Katka Bodová, representing Bratislava, Slovakia, 901 rated, lefty on the course, should show us some dynamic and diverse lines.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see the different playstyles. Next up, Andrea, Bernjak, 893 rated, from Beltinci, Slovakia.
Joining us here on this feature card, Laura Posch, 907 rated, representing Austria. I do believe also the Austrian women's national champion this year. So some comfort on the lead cards and feature cards, well-rounded game. You may have already seen her on coverage this season.
Yeah, for sure. And fourth up, rounding out the card, Nikola Moravcová, a rating 895. And as you can see, she's quite a new player, PDGA number way over 100,000.
And we start here on hole 1. Par 4, 165 meters. Players will be needing to throw a fighting hyzer off the tee, pushing this tree line that you see on the right as much as possible while ensuring that they fade left. They want a placement shot that lands at the mouth of the tunnel, allowing them an upshot and entrance into this well-guarded green. You do have OB on the left if you hyzer a little bit too much, but very unlikely to come into play. Here we go.
Yeah, hole 1 is the 6th most difficult hole on the course, averaging just at even par. So you can see Katka going with the aggressive left arm turnover. She has a lot more distance potential off the tee than the right-handed players.
Andrea now pushing that tree line, catching the fade right before it. As she skips out, she'll be well positioned as well to have a straight look to the green.
That's a really good position. On this fairway, you'd rather be towards the left side to open up the angle for the approach. Laura also challenging the right side, trees and bushes, but just barely coming out. That's also a decent spot for the approach.
And Nikola now. A new player for me, excited to see her game and her strengths here on some feature card coverage.
Also going with the lower hyzer, kind of straight towards the right side bushes, but stays short of them, luckily. Yeah, it's certainly exciting to see new faces on tour, and I think that's something that European disc golf will see a lot more in the future. And with a powerful sidearm there, slightly turning it over more than anticipated, but she'll be good for the par from there, I think.
And likely playing the backdoor to that green as she fires long. She'll have a lateral look now, sideways, into the basket. We see Andrea here, shaping the Anheuser backhand. The most natural second shot for the right-handed players here. As she catches that left side rough, she'll still be left with some guardian trees to contend with to try and secure a tricky birdie look.
You can see Katka being more left than others, having a pretty much a straight look for the basket, and that looks like a decent shot. She'll have a good chance for the birdie on hole 1.
Yeah, and interesting. What you'd consider to potentially be a right-handed friendly hole here. We see Katka utilizing her left-handed stroke nicely, shaping the fairway beautifully, getting up there.
Exactly. We just saw Laura with a bit of a low approach, and Andrea, she'll be putting for the par there.
Laura with the scramble, a really nice Anheuser turnover, pans out at the end to land nice and soft. Right up there, she'll be left with a short par putt.
Nikola running it from circle 2, but she'll set her for the par. It's really not a bad par on hole 1 here. It's a hole you would like to get, but it's not the end of the world if you miss it.
And Andrea there with a good putt from the rough. Found some trouble, but also found chains there for her par putt. Solid stuff.
Yeah, that's a good start. Always nice to get that first good putt in on hole 1. Katka looking to do the same. And that's a great one. Getting the birdie. That's an ideal start.
Absolutely. 2 great shots and a great putt to close it up. Nicely done by Katka. Very clean performance. We see Laura with the par. Had the slightly errant first up shot, but cleaned it up nicely from there on out. Also taking the 4.
And Nikola lost to top out. Also a par, so clean scorecard for the card on the hole number 1. And let's move on to the second hole.
Here you see hole 2. Par 4, 125 meters. You have this initial gap to hit. Once you do so, you break out into this open field with some large guardian trees still to contend with. A good shot will get as close as possible to this opening, where you then fire your upshot through this final tunnel, down into this descending green, and towards a heavily guarded basket. This is an attackable hole, and at this distance at par 4, definitely one that they want to pick up. Really dependent on a decent tee shot here to get through the first gap.
Yeah, and as you said, a very attackable hole. As we can see, Katka ripping it into the open. She'll have a short approach to the basket, only about 40 to 50 meters left. And it's actually the easiest hole compared to par on the course, so all of these players are certainly looking forward to possibly getting the birdie here. Looks like a very good shape there from Andrea.
Yeah, beautiful. Shaping the anhyzer, getting the full skip and flare out at the end. Fantastic flex shot there. Should be having a straight look to the basket. We see Laura now.
Going with a bit of a higher shot. Wanting it to turn a bit more to the right, but gets around the guardian tree in the middle of the fairway. She'll have a hyzer look to the basket. The left side is not too bad at all. You just have to shape something more than a straight shot from there.
Oh, Nikola catching some early trees, but a friendly result as she gets all the way past the second Guardians. That is a fine place to be, still very much attacking for birdie, despite an early kick.
Yeah, that was very fortunate. I'm sure she'll be really happy with the result after barely missing the first gap. As we see Katka putting it under the basket for the second birdie in a row. That's really great to see.
Laura, pinched from the gap, shapes a forehand anhyzer beautifully through the mouth of the tunnel, turning left the entire way, places it just by the pin. Great shot.
Great touch there. And Nikola going with the hyzer, and she's parked as well. These players are really tearing this hole apart.
They mean business. We see Andrea here with the perfect tee shot, full flex, just a jump putt approach, and we are looking at a potential star frame here on hole 2.
Yeah, terrific play by these players. They're really making it look like it's the easiest hole on the course, as it is, compared to par.
As they each tap in their short putts, that will be 2 for 2 for Katka. Really nice start for her.
Yeah,
great pace.
That's completely ideal. I mean, the first 2 holes are holes that you would like to get, but I think getting both of them is it's certainly the best way to start.
Here you see hole 3. Par 5, 252 meters, a unique hole. You have a big drive off the tee and a potentially second drive to lay up before a big island of hazard divides the fairway. You can see the flags right about here. Everything past that is hazard up until this beautiful teardrop-shaped island green. You want to land your third shot inside that and ideally be putting on fourth for birdie. A really demanding one if you struggle with big distance, but if you have a good drive, I think very manageable birdie.
Yeah, it is precisely 162 meters until the start of the hazard area. So you either need a really big drive of the first shot or a regular drive of the first shot and then another layup before the hazard area. Katka gets a great drive there, good ways out from the tee.
Andrea shaping the distance line just a little bit too low to get the full flight. She'll be just shy of that 100-meter mark and likely needing to lay up before the hazard.
Yep. Laura also aiming at the middle of the fairway. It's a pretty generous fairway here. You can pretty much shape any sort of shot you want, and the fairway is really wide. And Laura is in the middle, just the perfect spot.
Yeah, the first shot is really just about setting up your second one. Left and right, it's totally okay to under or overturn your drive off the first. What really matters is how aggressive you choose to get on the second. And I think this is just a layup before the hazard. It'll be interesting to see how close they push it, because it's still a big drive over that island to make it in bounds. So you want to get as close as possible without crossing that line.
True. That's very true. And especially with the hazard area being hazard, as Katka is just barely short of the hazard area. That's a great layup. Especially with the hazard, which means you play where the disc lies, but with a penalty stroke. Actually, Laura is going for the island, but just barely short. That was an ambitious effort for the green, and I respect that.
As do I. She still had quite some distance to carry, and given that teardrop shape, the pointed part at the bottom towards the players, it really is very narrow the shorter you have, as unfortunately Nikola also finds that hazard. This is Andrea now, trying to cross into the inbounds island, shaping that long hyzer.
And she's there, right in the middle of the lower part of the teardrop. So still maybe just barely in circle 2. This needs to fade though.
And a little bit overturned, she'll be putting from the top of that hill, while quite far, should be downhill, so should help with a bit of that putting distance. Katka now. A big rip here, but she'll need this to fade as well as she's pushing that left side. She swings it back in beautifully.
Yeah, that's a great shot. You can really see she put a lot of effort into that throw and paid off there. And Laura there trying to get up and down for the par.
Pins it.
That's a perfect shot.
We see Andrea. Simple jump putt approach to position herself nicely as well. Nikola from the top of the hill fires the putt, almost catches it. A good bid from that distance for sure.
That was a great run. Almost got the par save there. And Katka with another great putt. She's really feeling it today, huh?
On fire. 3 for 3. No signs of slowing down. Big drives, big putts.
That's great. And Andrea with a solid par there. Pretty much played the textbook par on this hole. Couple layups and then hit the island and get up and down for par. An unfortunate bogey there for Nikola, but that's something you can really easily do on this hole. You know, because the island is not super wide, and the distance is pretty long.
We move on to hole 4. Par 3, 114 meters. This hole offers 2 potential lines that you can throw. As the drone flies here, you see the straight line shaping before this tree on the right and the left fighting through for what a right-handed backhand player would need to turn over through here. You can also opt for the slightly larger gap that requires more distance going around the initial trees, but I think for a lot of these players, they're going to try to take the direct line, cut the hole down to as short of a distance as possible, and really try to attack.
Yeah, and Katka obviously going with the left-hand flat/hyzer shot with a driver. Pulls it just a little bit wide to the left, but since there is pretty much no OB on the hole, she'll be good there.
Just the Drava River on the left, I think, playing
True.
as a danger. But really open to give it a big drive. We see a nice placement there, probably just shy of circle 2, but with a long look.
Yeah, you could see Andrea going for the wide gap, as you mentioned. Laura, unfortunately, targeting the one big tree in the middle of the fairway, but a really good kick out, and she'll have a good chance to get the par.
Hey, come on. There's 2 or 3 big trees in the fairway.
That's true, that's true.
She found, unfortunately, the earlier one of them. And so does Nikola. Catching some branches, she'll still be left with a upshot. Laura now. with a nice shot, slides it right up and parks it.
Yeah, that's a really good up and down there, and important early in the round to get those stress-free pars when making small mistakes. Almost just as good for Nikola there, inside the circle. And Andrea going with the anhyzer, almost making it in the basket. And she's only 6 meters away there. That's a good shot.
Yeah, really healthy looking bid. We see Katka a little bit wide on her tee shot, swings it back into the green. As we'll see, the putts now all starting for par.
Good putt there. Center chains and low.
We were fortunate not to have too much winds here in any of these rounds, so putting was very comfortable. Circle 1, circle 2, I think a lot of players comfortable giving it a solid bid, not worrying too much about any external factors, just you and the chins.
For sure. And also, many basket placements on this course are actually relatively flat. So, for example, this hole, there's really no danger on the green.
Welcome player, commencing disc selection. Choose your driver. The Kotari. Choose your approach. The Kia. Choose your putter. The Tui. Selection complete.
We move on to hole 5. Par 4, 203 meters. Definitely a tricky hole as we now enter the woods. The course changes a little bit and suddenly the gaps get smaller and the holes more demanding. You need a straight to rightwards finishing shot that hits all through, trying to land soft before that small trench in the middle of the fairway. Your second shot will try to go over and through into this wide open field where you have a tucked away basket and a heavily guarded green, a very difficult birdie to take, and a 4 is a completely fine score here.
Yeah, exactly. This is the second most difficult hole on the course, averaging over 5 strokes. So taking a 4 is good, and even taking a 5 is very acceptable on this hole. Katka just a little bit early to the right side. It is quite a tight gap, about 50 or 60 meters off the tee. Andrea hitting the gap well, but unfortunately fading off a little bit. We'll have to see whether she has that bush to contend with or not. Laura going for the low route, which is good to stay in the fairway, but unfortunately also tailing off to the left for a bit.
Nikola now with a few lines shown to her. She goes with a very hyzer release and an understable disc as that fights up to flat and has beautiful placement, dead center fairway, great control of the disc.
That's exactly what you want, and being able to get that central placement in the fairway is really important for the second shot, since being in the middle of the fairway opens up the gap for the second shot, so you can have a better chance at getting out into the open field. Katka having to go with the patent pending backhand and looks to be pushing a bit too far on the left side. So it's going to be tricky from there.
Nikola here in a perfect position, once again relying on the understability with a significant hyzer angle release. She fights around that tree line and is now well positioned to attack the green on her third. 2 great shots.
Yeah, and on this hole, the 4 is really what these players are going for. It's even though it's marked as par 4, the 4 pretty much plays as a birdie. And Laura with a great shot down the middle of the fairway. She'll have only about 30 to 40 meters left from there.
And it's a deceptive green. It looks pretty open from the front, but closes off really quickly if you bleed left, right, or long. So a lot of players are opting to choosing rather to be about 10 meters short rather than 5 to 7 long. You want to be just at the mouth of the entrance, as we see a fantastic shot from, I believe, Katka. Wow. Fighting into circle. Open look at the putt. That was a great shape.
That was incredible angle control with such steep anhyzer angle with the disc still being able to get the finish to the basket. And that's another great shot from Andrea, putting it right next to the basket. That's perfect. Nikola having to deal with the left side bush, having to throw this steep hyzer angle approach, but she's also right there. That's some great approaches by the group.
Laura fires her jump putt, settles nicely just before that rough comes into play. I believe her fourth shot there, she'll have a short putt for 5. This is Katka for 4. As you mentioned, almost playing as birdie. She's unable to translate that one, but finds chains, and you see Laura there putting in her 5. Relative to the field, still a fine score.
Yeah, 5 is just fine. 4 is ideal. And Katka, especially with the hot start she had, it's just fine to take the bogey here.
But she did all the work. It can be frustrating, especially on a course that has such difficult throwing requirements, to not be translating them on the green. Just to get all the way up there to give yourself a chance at the birdie or par can feel fantastic. Tough to not translate it, but she's still playing a great round and she'll hold her head high.
That's very true. I feel like on these tough courses, the putting almost gets more difficult since single putt feels more important.
Absolutely. We move on here to hole 6. Par 3, 102 meters. You fire a nose-up shot through the initial archway tunnel with the high floor. You want to crest over this fallen log and fade slightly left towards this tucked-away basket. More of a straight shot than a hyzer, but that can be difficult to manage given that you need to throw nose-up off the tee to avoid this immediate hill and high floor.
The gap is very tight, as we see Nikola there hitting the first tree on the left. And this hole actually plays very far with the high floor, because you have to throw the disc nose up and kind of high. It plays, I think, a little bit longer than the marked 102 meters. So getting a putt on this hole already requires quite a big and accurate shot.
Laura now, hyzer release. She's looking to have this flip up to flat, and it does. She's battling with this final obstacle. Looks to be just behind it. Interested to see if she'll go under or over it, as it's at a very awkward height if you're not near where it hits the floor.
Very true. And Nikola there, throwing a forehand into the open field. That looked decent. I hope she has a look for the bogey there. And Katka, unable to quite go over the fallen tree there, but she will have a bit of a run for the par, I would think.
Nikola now beats the last obstacle and makes her way to the green. Doesn't get a full flight or as much distance as I'm sure she'd like, but she is certainly up there in putting. As Laura fires off a soft hyzer, gets also around that bend, she'll be left with about 7 meters.
And Andrea just putting it near the basket. It's kind of a downhill putt from where the log is. So, for example, this putt is, even though it's from the knee, I was expecting Katka to run the putt, but secures the bogey there. A great putt there. That was in the heart. Even as a bogey putt, it does give a lot of confidence when you drain such a good putt for the bogey.
Laura with a good par save there, fighting her way around the corner and putting it in. This is another one where the 2 is incredibly difficult and 3 is a good score. As we see Andrea now going through her routine, finds the par save, nicely done as well.
Yeah, and even though it's not very windy for the most of the day, you could see the flag kind of flapping around there, so there's a little bit of a breeze.
On this backside, yeah, definitely some of the more open holes, unguarded by the tree lines, comes into play. As we see here, hole 7, par 4, 137 meters. This is a pure tunnel shot the entire way. While quite forgiving on the left and right, the rough is very, very thick, and if you do over or underturn your disc, you can very quickly find trouble and be required to pitch out at best. A lot of players just want to keep their disc low and straight ×2 and make their way to the green.
That's true. It's definitely not one of the more difficult holes on the course. It's actually the third easiest hole. And as you said, really key on this hole to keep your driver low so that it doesn't tail off to the left or doesn't turn too much to the right. And you can see Andrea kind of throwing a little bit nose up, a little bit high, and tails off to the left, unfortunately. Laura with the opposite mistake, turning it over to the right side woods. Which that is actually a very common mistake on this hole, since the left side seems a little bit more dangerous. It's a little bit, the left side bushes are a little bit closer to the tee pad, so it's easy to turn it over to the right, as Nikola does as well.
And of course, a lot of players will get to this hole and try to pump out as much distance as possible. Trying to get that big drive, very easy to overcommit almost to the shot and end up overturning it.
Yeah, it's actually quite deceiving, as we see Laura just pitch out and a little bit forward to the fairway. The fairway is kind of wide here, so it certainly tempts you to go for a big shot. And wow, that was an incredible scramble shot from Andrea, giving herself the opportunity for the birdie even.
Katka now getting a soft hyzer bid, doesn't quite flip it up to flat, bleeds out a touch early, but still very much within the circle for her putt. We see here Nikola from the rough, shaping the high and hyzer, gets the full flight, and she sneaks her way right up there as well. Also a very solid scramble.
Yeah, that was good angle control there, going with the high flex shot. Laura kind of fading off with the approach. That's surprising. Normally she's very good with the approaches. Katka, unfortunately, airballing from just inside the circle.
Laura,
unfortunate miss there.
Little bit low. Very nice line, though. As we see from Andrea, the birdie putt. Great scramble as well. She was off to that left side, crested over the rough, fought her way to the green, and puts it in for 3. Nicely done. Nikola,
yeah, that's a good birdie. Nikola also with the birdie. It's certainly a birdie that you would like to get, if possible, but par really doesn't do you too bad on this hole. I noticed Andrea has this routine of when she makes a putt, she really walks it into the basket, maybe gaining some extra confidence from that. I like to see those unique routines.
We are creatures of habit, after all, often performing at our best when we can stick to our guns. We know what we need to do. We'll see if they can do it here. Hole 8, par 4, 162 meters, another very demanding par 4 through the woods. You have this initial archway which you need to fight through, oftentimes a straight shot, maybe softly ending to the right, but you can see anything right too early can then again be pinched off. As you enter the second leg of the fairway, you have a series of trees that you need to beat as the fairway bends first to the right and then back to the left, where you find a tucked away basket in a protected green. This is another really hard to get birdie that requires 2 incredible shots. 4 is a good score.
Yeah, this is absolutely a brutal hole. The most difficult hole on the entire course, averaging 5.56 strokes, so 1.5 strokes above par. And as we see Andrea going with a bit of a high release there, it's really key on this hole to keep the disc low out of the tee shot. That's a perfect example right there from Nikola. That's pretty much an ideal position of the drive.
Yeah, pretty much straightforwards. Flight, got a little bit of rightwards fade at the end with the forehand. Katka as well, shaping one beautifully, hugs that straight line the whole way. Not much skip at the end. She'll be well positioned as well.
That's some great accuracy there. Laura just barely making it through the gap. That's actually a huge difference from where she hit the bushes to where she actually landed. That might be even a 1-stroke difference. And Andrea tailing off to the left into the bushes. The bushes are very thick on this hole, so anything inside the bushes, you're probably pitching out sideways.
Laura shaping a really nice forehand there into that second leg of the fairway. Nice and low, but got some good ground play, tons of glide. She'll have a manageable upshot to the green. We see from Nikola a beautiful shot fading a little bit early. She will be caught just on the edge of that rough. As the camera pans here, you see she was fighting around that last bend towards the green.
Yeah, again on the approach, as for the drive, for the same thing, it's important to keep the disc low, because if you keep it low, then it has much less of a chance to turn over or fade into the woods. And as we expected, unfortunately, she has to just pitch out into the middle of the fairway. But from here, it's a manageable approach. Just need to miss those 2 trees, unfortunately, not quite, but it's only about 35 meters left to the basket from there.
Laura now her third shot. She can, I think, just barely see the basket. She opts for the standstill backhand, and early release finds her in the left side rough. She will most likely have an Anheuser forehand straddle. Katka going full layout. She sends that one to the green. Great shot and a great shape to get herself up there and putting.
Yeah, that was looked like a very difficult stance. I'm impressed that to keep the angle control so good with such a stance. And Nikola pitching up to the circle with the forehand. That was well done.
Andrea with the soft bid actually fires it long, still unobstructed though, as she'll be looking back slightly uphill, but well positioned. Laura, here's that Anheuser forehand we mentioned off the knee. She fights her way up. Very short putt left.
Yeah, it's good to mention that the green is sloping away after the basket. Unfortunately, getting the best of Andrea there. And Nikola with a good par save. This is a really good hole to get the par. Not that much need for the birdie, because with a par you're already gaining many strokes on the field.
Katka as well, securing her 4. Nicely done, particularly on the upshot. Gave her a fairly reasonable putt. Laura taking the bogey with 1 errant approach.
An unfortunate triple bogey for Andrea, but I guess if you're gonna take a triple bogey, it's probably on this hole, because it's the most difficult on the course.
Really tricky, but we leave the woods and once again enter the open fields by the Drava River. Hole 9 is a 95-meter par 3 with a basket perched at the top of this small mound. Just left and over the side of that mound, you will find OB, roughly 5 meters down the hill, shown by these orange flags that you saw right at the end. A big hyzer if you have the power, maybe a hyzer flip up to flat to secure the distance.
Yeah, this hole, even though it says 95 meters, plays slightly longer with the uphill finish. A really good play here is to keep the disc right off the basket all the way, and just at the very end fade to the hillside, so that you have a putt at the basket. Very difficult to park this hole. And with the lefty, it's actually interesting because you have to go kind of over the hillside and fade back. And looks like Katka there is well in bounds and looking up at the basket.
Yeah, and a tough line for her, but she secures it nicely. Laura pushing this one a little bit too straight, gets it overturned, but as it fades back towards the basket, she'll be outside the circle. I think personally, for me, likely a layup. I think for her as well.
Yeah, it's certainly a dangerous putt to run from that distance or any distance, because right after the basket on the left side, it is sloping away, and even if your putt doesn't have a lot of power behind it, if you miss, you're trying to make a soft bid, it's very likely that the disc would roll away. But Andrea there, smartly putting it just under the basket.
Hey, that's one way to control the speed of the putt, just hit the koozie.
That's true. Let's see, Nikola likely to be running this, and gives it a good soft bid and lands the disc flat, which is important for keeping it safe. Laura doesn't care about the birdie, just wants to get the par, which is it's a good play on this hole. It's not a very frequently birdied hole.
I think a lot of players will be looking to crash the bottom of that hill. If they're left with a reasonable putt, happy to give it a bid, but very hard to stick a great landing here, and just a green that really encourages the layup if you're not in a prime location. That is it for our front 9. Just like that, rapid fire. As we take a look at the standings, we see your leader, Katka Bodová, 1 under par. In second place, Nikola Moravcová at even. Mariana Must, 1 over. 3 players tied for 4th. An exciting front 9 and a great view of this course.
Yeah, we had some good throws there, and especially good job by Katka on the first 3 holes to get herself a bit of a cushion.
Incredible start. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to support European disc golf coverage, and we'll catch you on the back 9.
See you guys.